Benton County voters will decide two locally contested races in this year's May 21 primary, one for Oregon State Representative and the other, which this debate style discussion examines. For Benton County Commissioner, we'll take 90 seconds to set the stage for this hour-long discussion. The Board of Commissioners in Benton County is made up of three elected officials that oversee all county operations. Unlike the separation of powers at the state, local, at state and federal levels, rather, commissioners act as executives, legislators, and as an official panel. Voters will decide on two of the commissionerships in November, but for the primary, only the Democratic Party has a contested race, and only one of those seats, in fact, is being contested. The two candidates are Gabe Shepherd, currently representing Ward 4 on the Corvallis City Council, and Liz Irish, currently a member of the county's Planning Commission. We thank each of the candidates for appearing. I'm Steve Schultz, publisher of the Corvallis Advocate. Questions for this debate-style roundtable come from a mix of participants at the Corvallis Advocate, City Club of Corvallis, and the public as they have responded to our invitation to submit questions on the Advocate's website. For this race, there's been a number of questions, and the topics have fallen into five broad categories: mental health and county staffing, homelessness, housing, the landfill north of Corvallis, and leadership skills. By toss of the coin, we'll be starting with Gabe Shepherd. First question, Mr. Shepherd. Mental health and staffing. Currently, there is concern that the county's new crisis center starts without full staffing, and it is a common view that there aren't enough qualified mental health workers regionally or even nationally to go around. As an outsider looking in, what would you encourage the health department to do to be recruiting? And really, by extension, knowing that we have a broadly tight labor market, what would you look to try to do in terms of helping the county to recruit in a competitive environment and retain staff? Mr. Shepherd, 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Steve. Hello. So talking about mental health, I am a huge supporter of government workers. I myself am a government worker for the city of Albany, and I know that there can often be better paying jobs just around the corner for your average worker who's interested in public service. I think that in order to recruit good and qualified staff for a mental health crisis center and other mental health services in the county, we need to really make sure that we are paying competitive rates and that we are supporting our staff well. I think that, like you said, this is a national crisis that we're experiencing, a lack of mental health workers. So I think that you'll hear me say this word a lot today, but partnerships. So I think that encouraging incentives at the state level with partnering with state legislators, partnering with the governor and other offices to incentivize and encourage people to get into this field, that we really need new and fresh people in, and people who are willing to serve their local communities in a government capacity.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. I'll move over to you, Ms. Irish. 2 minutes.
I think this is a complex issue that hits on a lot of issues, a lot of contributing issues. The first thing, it's my understanding after talking to mental health officials with the county that happened was the state mandated a certain level of care and pushed all of the counties into hire mode at the same time, which forced every county in the state of Oregon to compete for the same workers. They could have probably staggered that and helped us out on that whole hiring process, but they didn't do that. So that's one of the issues that we have right now is we're competing with every county to fill all the open positions that are required. The second issue is affordability of our area. It's not only public employees that are living outside of the area and commuting into Benton County, but it is also corporate and nonprofit and all of our service workers as well that can't afford to live here. And that's a huge issue. I don't know that we can compensate a public worker enough pay to make up for that. I do agree we need to have adequate pay for our mental health workers. They take on a lot, they shoulder a lot. But we're looking at the average income for somebody to live in Benton County at 140,000 currently. I'm not sure Benton County can carry that load. And then the second thing is that's actually very good is the state has partnered with a bunch of universities, University of Oregon particularly, to offer 2-year certificates to get more people into the profession, to just kind of expedite more counselors and more people to help. And that will take a couple of years, obviously, to start getting those people in place. But I think we've recognized that we have a shortage. And so there is some push on the college level to get quicker degrees and people out into the field faster. So that will benefit all of us in the end.
Thank you. And then, as a follow-up question, knowing that there is real competition out there in terms of folks, and that the state has created that kind of constriction, as you were referring to. One questioner asked, would it be possible to explore contracting with private, for-profit, nonprofit organizations we have in town, Samaritan Health, for instance, but others as well? Would you be willing to explore that? Could I get about 30 seconds from each of you? I'll start with you, Mr. Shepherd.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and the answer is essentially there's very few avenues that aren't worth exploring, at least surface level exploration. I get concerned when we start talking about partnering with private companies to do government work for this kind of stuff. It just there's some issues that can come along with that, but to examine and take a look at anything we can do to solve an issue, I have no issues looking at that.
Okay, and then Ms. Irish.
As a mother of a young adult with bipolar and our challenges in the private healthcare system to get adequate counseling, I don't think Samaritan's in a position to help anybody out. I think they're barely holding their own in the private sector. So while it seems on its face as a great quick response, I think you'll find that they're kind of swimming in their own employee shortage currently.
And then in general, there are problems staffing everything from groundskeepers, administrative help, all the way to executive. What can the county do to be competitive attracting staff, given the environment and how expensive it is to live here? Could I get about 30 to 60 seconds from you, Mr. Shepherd?
Yeah, well, I'll start again with pay. That's one of the main things that people are going to be looking at when they're evaluating their government jobs and where they want to live. Yes, we live in one of the most expensive counties in the state, and we live in one of the most expensive areas. Corvallis is one of the least affordable cities in the state, but the council has done a lot of good work over the last few years to make movements on that and increase our housing stock. So I think that and again, this is a national issue about finding enough people to work your local government jobs. And I think that one of the top things that we need to look at again and again and again is pay and compensation for government workers.
Ms. Irish.
Again, I don't think we can give compensation enough to make our area affordable. We aren't one of the most expensive. Corvallis is the least affordable city in the state of Oregon. We are the second least affordable county in the state of Oregon. We cannot make it affordable by giving people raises. We have to tackle housing directly, and we have to be aggressively attacking it. And I would say the biggest population and the biggest employer, the city of Corvallis, has done little to nothing to fix that over the last few years. So I think we have a lot of communities outside Corvallis Corvallis that are really interested in helping, Adair Village and Philomath. And I think we're going to have to lean on those partners to really accomplish the housing needs and bridge that gap so we can make it affordable here.
And then rebuttals from either of you, 30 seconds, Mr. Shepherd.
Yeah, and I do want to say that the city of Corvallis has done a lot over the last few years to increase our housing stock and reduce the amount of red tape that the people have to go to develop housing in the state. As Miss Irish said earlier, that these kind of things take time. But just this last year, the council, and I was a vote for it, and introduced tax exemptions, MUPTI and LERPTI, to help incentivize growth. We just had.
Hang on. Could you explain for viewers what MUPTI and LERPTI are?
Oh, I would love to. Yes, MUPTI, multi-unit property tax exemption, and LERPTI is low income
Okay,
property
go
tax
on.
exemption.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And we implemented those. And just this last council meeting, just yesterday, we had a report on how much housing has been built in the city over the last few years. And while it's not as much as many of the people on the council, including myself, want to see, it is an increasing trend, and we are reducing the oversight and overhead for people to be able to develop and increase our housing stock in the city.
Response, Ms. Irish.
Yeah, that we can do so much better than we have. I was part of the housing policy for the city of Albany. Governor Kotek came down and congratulated Mayor Johnson on the amount of building that they're doing. We attempted, Mayor Johnson and I, to meet with the mayor of Corvallis and help him out on that, and he brushed us aside. I don't think Corvallis has done what they can do. And I don't think they're willing to do what they can do. And I'm not exactly sure why. And I don't know that anybody's been able to pin it down. I just met with some women as the League of Women Voters on their housing. And they said, we don't understand. We keep asking the question, why aren't we building? And we never get an answer. So now they're talking to other cities that are doing it because they can't get their own city to answer.
Ms. Irish, who was mayor at the time that you approached Mayor Corvallis?
Mayor Mon.
Okay. Moving along to another staffing related question, and this is just from one particular viewer, but it struck us as an interesting idea. Could the county consider high school apprenticeship programs that would then train folks to come in and work perhaps while they're going to university? So these would be for jobs that don't need a degree, such as groundskeeping or administrative assistant or this kind of thing, data entry. Just 30 seconds from each of you, Mr. Shepherd.
Yeah. Again, this falls under the category of all options are worth exploring. I think I do like the idea of involving high schoolers in training programs. I'm a big supporter of people getting into apprenticeship programs and those kind of things. Not everybody has to or should go to college. It's not for everybody, and there are people who can get into the labor market and make more money than if they went through college and accumulated debt. So I'm all in favor of those things. I feel like that's more of a school that would be something to do in partnership with the Corvallis School Board or some of our other school boards in the county. And I have the support of many of our local school board members, and I'd be happy to meet with them and talk about those kind of things if that's a item worth considering.
Liz, it seems like an interesting idea. What do you think of it? The idea that there'd be apprenticeships for high school students and that they could perhaps join the counties even before they've left high school?
I think it's a great idea. I have not dived into partnerships with the county itself. I don't see why that couldn't happen, but I'm currently working with Girding and a couple other organizations to create a mentorship program for construction and other labors that we are in a tragic shortfall of. We just have not enough people to build the housing that we need if we had the funding for it today. And so we have so many layers of difficulty piled against us that Girding and I came together and we talked about reaching out to Benton Community College to actually come together with the schools and do a training program coupled with unions. So that is actually in effect, and I think that would probably be the most effective approach to doing it. Those are real living wages, and those are real jobs that are needed today.
So we're going to move over to homeless now. For this one, we will be starting with Liz Irish. First and foremost, looking at the current map, totality of services available in the area, like low and high barrier shelters, transitional, subsidized, and temporary housing, wraparound services, and really everything that the area and anything that the area is doing in terms of preventing or addressing homelessness in the area. What do you think the county is doing well? And what do you think can be improved? And how would you hope to proceed or motivate the county to proceed? And then to you, Ms. Irish. 2 minutes.
Um, I'm working to create an expungement clinic, and I sat with Judge Blake at the community court. And in that process, I discovered that we have a shortcoming with the county where we're able to address people when they're in crisis almost immediately. But we then tell those people in crisis, congratulations, you're in crisis, but it'll be 3 to 6 months before we have a healthcare provider to care for you. And that is a huge issue. If we have people at their worst mental health breakdown moments without anybody to help them to bring them out of their crisis, we're really failing at a real basic level. And so I hope that we can reorganize some of our priorities and make that a priority quickly. The other thing we have a challenge with when it comes to transitional housing is dual diagnosis. So if you are suffering from a mental illness and you have a drug addiction, there's currently no housing options for you. And that is a problem. And I think that if we don't have anywhere to take people, we can't really expect them not to be sleeping in tents on the street. So I would like to see a lot more low barrier and dual diagnosis options.
And then moving over to Mr. Shepherd.
Yeah, thank you. So the question, what is the county doing and what could the county be doing better?
And how would you motivate the county in the direction you're thinking?
Yes. So, the county has a lot of roles to play in houselessness and helping those who are unhoused. The county is a partner with the city of Corvallis on the Hope Board and a few other things. But I think that the county really needs to step up its game when it comes to partnerships with nonprofits. There is not a lot of, our nonprofits right now are at capacity. They are, it's even unsure if how much more funding that we give them without letting them build out their capacity, how much that funding would actually be helpful. I think one of the things we need to see, and I think the county can take a really big leadership role in this, is helping our nonprofits build their capacity to help serve the people who need their services. And I agree that we need a lot more low barrier shelters. We need a lot more transitional shelters. The city of Corvallis has donated or put money towards these kind of things, and there's even more in the works. And I think the county needs to be a more active partner in that work than they are currently.
For context, and either of you could answer this, but I'll ask you both to answer. But how many homeless folks do you suspect are living in the area? I'll start with you, Liz.
We know how many homeless folks are living in our area because we keep track of them. There is a little bit of a check system. We have a migration between 3 counties, Lincoln County, Benton County, and Lynn County, and that list contains about 6,000 individuals.
And how many of them are specific, do you believe, to Benton County?
I think they're all specific to Benton County, but they're transient. So depending on services, depending on weather, depending on circumstances, that is a consistent 6,000 that kind of move at any given time between the 3 counties.
Okay, and then where are you getting the number from?
I'm getting this from Brad Smith. He created a database for all the homeless shelters to start keeping.
And Brad is?
I'm Bigsby Northwest. He works closely with many of the shelters, and they know him very well.
Great, thanks.
Mhm.
Mr. Shepherd, so Gabe, do you have a sense that that number is correct, high or low?
I just want to say I'd never heard of this number specifically or anything like this. The closest thing that we talk about in our government circles is the pit count, point in time count that happens annually, and it's not terribly accurate because it is at a moment how many people are living in a certain area. And we have a lot of volunteers. It's a big effort every calendar year to go out and count people. But that's what federal funding is based off of, is that pit count. So while there might be other people out there with estimates or anything like that, that's the official number. And I don't
You
have that
have a
number.
sense of the, yeah, right,
I don't
okay.
have that number to hand, but it would be an easy one to find out. But we are constantly told that it is an underestimate of how many people are actually out living in homeless in our communities.
Right. And I will say from a public standpoint, numbers are quoted all the time from various sources. It's kind of hard to get your head around what is in fact the actual number, but I did want viewers to get some context. Let's go ahead and move over to affordable housing. It is highly related, obviously, to homelessness and apparently as well staffing, but it is not the same thing. Affordable housing is an animal unto itself. We'll be starting with Gabe on this one. Um, so, Gabe, what do you believe the county's role is in terms of either attracting affordable housing developments or building those developments itself? Also, there's a perception that regulations are part of the problem getting projects started. There's been the idea floated that maybe that at a certain threshold for certain service fees, development fees should be waived for affordable housing, with those dollars then moved over to the upmarket to subsidize the down market. I, 2 minutes on your sense of what the county can be doing um, going forward.
Yeah. So affordable housing is one of the most important things facing our county right now, and the lack thereof. The county's role in it, I think that the county is a great place, is a great body to be a convener, to bring people and partners to the table and say, where can we site housing that people can afford? So it's not incumbent upon Corvallis to just infill, Adair Village to just explode in size, and Philomath to just become a bedroom community. You know, we need to be able to have these conversations and sit at a table together and have that talk. When we talk about waiving fees, sometimes it sounds like a really great thing, but there are issues that come with that. When you waive development fees, these fees are so that we can develop out our infrastructure to be able to accommodate new housing and new places. These fees cover paving of roads, the installation of water, sewer, those kind of things. So, we can talk about waiving them, but it comes at a cost to the taxpayer at a later date. And I think that the county's role in affordable housing is really a role of partnering with cities who have a lot more direct control. However, the county does have direct control over being able to put small ADU type housing on our rural lands, and I think that I think they need to ease some restrictions for that to be able to afford workforce housing out on out on some farmlands, and mother-in-law houses out in our rural areas.
And then, in fairness to the person that submitted the question, I think what their sense was the idea that you could waive fees on one end of the market and increase fees for the other end of the market. So if somebody's building a 3,000 foot, 4,000 foot house that's going to be in the, 8 or 900,000 range versus somebody who's trying to build affordable housing, let the folks that are buying in that larger range pay some additional fees. Is that an idea that for you would have appeal or not?
I think it'd have appeal. My concern would be the legality of it. I'm not sure where, that's why that's why local governments have lawyers,
Right.
because they'll be the ones who can tell you, well, if we do it this way, it's technically discrimination against those who are building this type of housing, and we can't do it. But it's something that's really, I think that's a great idea, worth at least asking the lawyers about.
And then I'll move over to you, Liz. Then housing, what can the county do? 2 minutes.
So we've done tiered SDCs. That's what the question is alluding to. Tiered SDCs are happening right now in Albany and have been there for some time. So if you're building an ADU, you're not paying the same SDCs as a 5,000 square foot house. We don't have to subsidize it in order to make that happen, and we can still have the money for our infrastructure. So we don't need lawyers to tell us. We don't need to speculate. We don't need to guess. That is in real time happening in the city of Albany right next door. As far as putting mother-in-law houses and existing buildings on protected forest and farmlands, I think that you're going to have a conversation with the state about that. That's not something that the county can decide. And we have all kinds of options we just haven't done here regionally. I would also like to add, we've already established through Benton County on a subcommittee of housing a partnership with all of the cities surrounding us and counties surrounding us. We have the state, we have the nonprofits, we have developers. We already have all those partnerships regionally established, and we're working with them currently.
And I guess following up on some of your answer, when you say all sorts of options that we're not looking at, could you name a couple of options?
Well, currently, the state just passed a Housing Bill 1537, and that allowed loans to municipalities for infrastructure. There's 0% interest loans. And if a project qualifies, and that would be affordable housing and low income housing, that can be a zero interest loan that's paid back with the tax revenues from those projects that would never have been built in order to get them built. The schools, I clarified because I was concerned about the schools not getting their tax amount, but the schools will be getting the taxes. You can also pass that on to the developer for them to pay later as well. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing item. So there are things on the table now to make that happen. And I think we just have to give the state time to execute those from that bill that just passed.
And then Mr. Shepherd and Ms. Irish, I'm going to give you each 30 seconds to close out this subject or rebut. I'll start with you, Gabe.
All right. I do want to briefly talk about tiered SDCs. Yes, that is a way that we are talking about, how we're going to recoup those costs, but we were talking about affordability versus just regular development, not the size of housing, which is what tiered SDCs are about. And I do want to ask Ms. Irish if it's all right to talk about her work for housing policy for the city of Albany, because I've heard in a few of her speeches and on her voters pamphlet statement that she talks about her work on the housing implementation plan for the city of Albany, but her name is nowhere on the document. And I've asked people around, what her involvement was with that, and I haven't heard an answer. So appreciate it.
And then Ms. Irish, you can respond to that or rebut however you see fit.
So tiered SDCs, you're right, are based on square footage, but it would help affordable housing because affordable housing is smaller. So, I mean, we can split hairs about this, but it's the same thing, essentially. And as far as housing policy, I worked with the Mayor Johnson on that, and I have lots of names of lots of individuals, including Community Development Director Matt, who sat with me through many of meetings and could tell you that I was part of that.
Okay, and
If I may rebut that,
I will give you 15 seconds.
I worked for the city of Albany. I was in the building when a lot of those meetings were happening. And I would encourage just anybody who's interested to actually ask Matthew Rutgers and the city of Albany how the involvement in that process. So thank you.
And then Ms. Irish.
I think that that's really nice. You're a clerk, you're not working for community development, and anybody can talk to Mayor Johnson about that, and he'd be happy to tell you my role. So
I'm not talking about the elected mayor. I'm talking about.
So I'm going to cut this off, and what I'm going to say is, I guess I'm going to ask you a little bit different question. I'm going to give you each about 45 seconds to a minute on this. Dream project. What do you do to get the county moving on affordable housing? And I'm gonna voice, I know it is an area of frustration amongst some of us that have looked at this long term. There's always discussion of years ago, I forget what panel it was we were hosting, but somebody said, well, yeah, Corvallis has an affordable housing plan. It's called Lynn County. But that, of course, creates a lot of infrastructure and a lot of commuting that maybe we don't want to have happen from a sustainability standpoint. Dream project to get affordable workforce housing that somebody can afford on, say, a $50,000 or $60,000 salary. So workforce. Um, I'm going to ask Liz to start 45 seconds, 60 seconds, somewhere in there.
So, in order currently under how this housing situation sits right now, if we were to do this tomorrow, the only way we would be able to get somebody into housing that makes 50,000 would be a land trust. And that would take, for those of you who don't know, we've done them in Sonoma, we've done them for colleges and professors at different university towns, where you have a nonprofit that owns the land and then you just purchase the house itself. And you purchase the land on 99-year leases. They're old, they've been around forever. That would be probably the best way to approach that if you needed instant gratification. Otherwise, I don't see a future in the near future where somebody making $50,000 a year can afford to buy anywhere in Benton County
What
currently.
about rent?
Rent, possibly, but that's going up as well. That's a supply and demand issue, just like housing. With the university and the number of students and the people who want to live here, I just see people who can buy at this level downsizing to afford this level. And so you have a bunch of people competing. So if you just built a bunch of houses and apartments, it's going to be flooded with all of the income levels unless you do some deed restriction and some really creative thinking. It's going to take the village to fix this problem. It's not going to be just Corvallis or the county.
And then Gabe, I'm going to move over to you. And actually, uh, I allowed Liz to take a minute and a half, so I'm going to allow you to do the same thing. Dream project, something you can get to have happen. You can move the county to do it. What would you do? Affordable housing.
Yeah, and I think that this goes back to the central theme that I've been talking about, which is partnerships. I think it's working with our local cities to make sure that that there's not as much red tape, that there is an easy process for people to be able to build housing that is actually subsidized and that's actually affordable. And I appreciate what you said, Steve. Not everything is about purchasing a 4-bedroom or a 2-bedroom family house. Some people want to live their life as a renter. Some people want to live their life renting or living in a townhouse. So the entire spectrum of housing is what's needed to be able to be built and be affordable. I really do support the state's middle housing initiative, and that's something that the city of Corvallis was already on top of before other cities like the city of Albany got forced into it. Was that we were ready to be able to allow for these types of middle housing, townhouses, cottage clusters, things like that, to be able to be built in our localities to increase the housing stock locally. And I think that the Oregon State University has oscillated back and forth between good partner, bad partner. Right now, we're in a really good space with them as great partners to be able to. They know there's a housing crunch locally, and they're planning on netting about 1,500 student-specific units within the next few years. And I don't think it's going to stop there.
Okay, and then we're going to move over to the landfill. This one we will start with Liz. So there we have had so many questions about the landfill. They flow into a few different categories. And I guess the real question that folks have, one, do you believe that the landfill has been fully compliant with its obligations towards human health, their impacts on human health, their impacts on the environment? Do you believe that the DEQ and the EPA has adequately monitored the landfill? Do you believe the landfill should be closed or not? How would you do that? Do you believe that expansion is a reasonable path forward, and under what terms? Most specifically, having to do with, is there any way that the county can take over monitoring and perhaps bill the landfill for the monitoring? Maybe that would be based on some sort of surcharge on dumping fees. There's been just tremendous number of questions on this, but I can only give you 2 minutes. So Liz,
Yeah, I was
go
giggling.
ahead.
I was giggling because I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can cover every one of those. So I'll do my best. Currently, I'm a planning commissioner, so I can't give you my opinion, personal opinion about closing or not closing. I wish I could, and I know people want that from me because there's been a lot of accusations of about where I stand on it. My job as a planning commissioner is to be neutral and to hear the criteria and make judgments off the criteria given to me. I don't think we have done throughout the history of this landfill adequate monitoring of the landfill. Adair Air Force Base started this landfill, and environmental laws over time have come up and caught up with us in a sense that there was a lot of things that just weren't taken care of, like in the 80s, the 70s, and the 80s that we would consider super important today. Um, I also know that we've defunded a lot of or a few of the programs that monitor things like landfills. For example, the DEQ has a noise monitoring policy that they've defunded, and there currently isn't any funding at the DEQ. So if the landfill is extraordinarily noisy, there's no way to enforce that. That's a state mandate. And currently, there is no funding at the county level to have that particular issue mandated. So my guess would be, after going through Benton County Talks Trash and looking at the history and the conditional use permits of the past and sitting with the legal subcommittee, that there's a whole lot more we could do to make the public feel safe and feel better about the landfill. But unfortunately, I can't really comment on any future CUPs, and I wasn't part of the last CUP, the conditional use permit that came through, and about closing or opening, which I haven't heard to be a consideration currently.
And then I'll follow up a little bit with you on this. Do you believe that a conditional use permit that for expansion could include a monitoring structure in fees to the operator to support that structure, including fluidity, that the fees are attached to what will be growing cost over a course of years? Do you think that that would be something that is permissible legally, one, and two, something that could be a practical implementation in some way?
We chatted about that quite often in BCTT, and I think that that's a reasonable direction to go in. On legality, I can't speak to that. I'm not an attorney, but I'm sure that that will come up during the SMMP, the Sustainable Materials Management Plan. That's really what that group, and they're looking for volunteers currently to be on it, is like, okay, we know where we're at today. Let's look to the future and what do we want to happen in regards to the landfill. And I think that that group is going to do a better job of identifying that. And I look forward to the information they come up with.
When you say BCCT, could you explain for
Sorry,
folks what that is?
Benton County Talks Trash.
Thanks. Okay, and then I'm going to move to Mr. Shepherd. Really, Liz had around 2.5 minutes there when I followed up with her. So I'm going to give you 2.5 if you need it.
All right, thank you. Yeah, well, one of the things that I'll agree with my opponent on is that there are limits to what we can say legally about what we'd support and what we'd oppose, because that could invalidate a future vote as a county commissioner by showing bias. So these are just some legal requirements that come along with the nature of land use. But there are lots of things we can talk about, like the deeply concerning environmental impact of having residents live near a landfill, and the proximity of that landfill to the water table, and the concerns about the leaking of chemicals from that landfill into the water table that a lot of people draw their drinking water from. I have seen pictures of the methane cloud that is emitted by our local landfill, and it is incredible. It is the amount of methane this landfill emits in comparison to comparable landfills, or even larger landfills, it's disproportionate how much this landfill pollutes. I have real concerns about the environmental impact of this landfill on our local residents. And I've been out there quite a lot to Adair Village, to Soap Creek, the area around there, and people don't feel like they're being heard by their local government. People don't feel like the county's seriously engaging them in their concerns. Um, so like I said, there's a limit to what I can talk about, but I do think that self-regulating is not a good idea for private industry. Just in general, we can laugh about it with Boeing, because Boeing planes have been self-regulating, and now doors are dropping out of the sky. And our local landfills have been self-regulating and self-reporting the amount of leaks that they allegedly have. And recently, I think our environmental, the EPA went through, counted a lot more leaks than the Republic Services self-reported. So I really do have these kind of concerns about the environmental impact of this landfill on our area, and I'm not entirely convinced that what we have been told, which is that having a landfill locally benefits our local ratepayers. I believe that I haven't heard convincing evidence that that's the case.
And then I will follow up with you, Gabe, and also Liz. Does the county have the authority to regulate out of any business, whether it's a chemical plant, manufacturer of some sort? Yeah, of course, a landfill. Does the county have the ability to regulate and even close down perhaps a chemical plant or other emitter for its impacts on the community? Uh, Gabe, I'll start with you.
Well, I'm not going to speculate about the county's legal authority to shut down private businesses. I know that the county has there's a lot of authority that is invested in our local governments. But I'm not going to speculate about whether or not they can shut it down or regulate it in certain ways. That's something that I want to make an informed decision about, and talk to a legal authority on that.
Okay, and then Liz, you as well.
Yeah, I agree with Gabe on this. I think it's more complicated than that. When we have Superfund sites, that sort of thing, you see the federal government come in, right? When there's proof that there is some kind of massive contamination happening. It's not as easy as, the planning commission or community development saying, we think you're not complying, so therefore we're shutting you down. I just haven't seen that authority come through, and I didn't hear that through the legal subcommittee.
Yeah. I think we've done as well as we can in this area for all of these questioners. And I need to tell you that the next area, leadership, and I'll be starting with Gabe on this. We always get some questions about leadership, but not like we have this time. Overwhelming number. So what we're seeing is that there's quite a bit of concern out there about our area's electeds and how they are leading. In the instance of the county, folks pointed specifically to citizen advisory boards and work groups and seminars and Q&A sessions. And one questioner put it in specific relief in a way that we really heard it. They felt more like the county was invested in handling them than hearing them. You're seeing this in context of the landfill. You saw it in context of the justice systems improvement project when all of that was being formed up a couple of years ago. There is real frustration out there, and folks are feeling like elected leaders, and it's not just the county, but it is also quite a bit the county. They're feeling as though elected leaders are simply out of touch with voters in the county. They're frustrated, and they are looking for a breath of fresh air. Could you, Gabe, articulate how for viewers, how you'll be a different kind of leader for the county, or alternatively, why you think maybe that voters don't quite have the full story, but how would you be a different kind of leader? And how would, for the electorate, and then how would you work with the other commissioners and the staff at the county and other municipalities, and in terms of even state leadership, as you're lobbying to get things done, um, that is different than what the electorate is currently seeing? 2 minutes.
All right. Well, I'll start by saying how I'll be different than the current county commissioners. So, anyone can go to my website and see my endorsements list, and they'll notice that none of the incumbent county commissioners are on there. And that's because I believe that I'm going to be trying to do something different. I have committed to a town hall in every city, every community, every year. So I'm going to be out out with the people in Adair. I'm going to be up in North Albany. I'm going to be out in Kings Valley, and I'm going to be listening to what people have to say about their county government. And this is one of the things that earned me the endorsement of former Congressman Peter DeFazio, because this is the type of governance that I think is the way that it should be done and the way it should specifically be done in Oregon. I also want to move county meetings to have at least one meeting a month after traditional work hours so the general public can engage with their elected leadership, which is something that's really difficult to do when meetings are during a workday. As for partnering with other outside organizations, you can also see on my endorsements list, I have support from current and former city councilors from Corvallis, Albany, Philomath, and Monroe, as well as state legislators. So building these relationships and making sure that our local people are heard and that their views are carried to other organizations, that's something I'm exceedingly ready to do. I've been a city councilor for 4 years. I'm starting my 4th year on the Corvallis City Council. I have that elected leadership experience, and I'm ready to commit full-time to a full-time job of being the representative of the people and being out with the general public of Benton County. This is one of the reasons why I'm running, is that's the type of job and that's the type of person I want to be. And I agree. I think that the people of the county, when I'm out talking to people, that's the number one thing I hear, is that they feel disconnected from the county government, from the current county commissioners, and from how the county government has been operating over the last few years.
And then I will move over to you, Liz. 2 minutes. Frustration that folks don't feel heard and feel as though commission is and other electeds in the area are simply out of touch with their constituents. Liz.
I think that it's really interesting that Gabe is trying to separate himself from that whole feeling. I mean, he is an elected official in Corvallis, and I would venture to say Corvallis is part of that frustration. I have not been an elected official. I work behind the scenes for many elected officials, and I like to call myself a professional meddler. I just go out and I help and I interact and I do things like work on expungement clinics and with Gerdine to come up with a mentorship program, not because I'm an elected official, because that's what I do. The reason that Gabe didn't have a great answer for how many homeless there are in our community is because he doesn't have a great relationship with the organizations, the houseless organizations that we have currently. I would challenge that he will be the fresh face of positive interaction and transparency coming to the county. The reason that the county commissioners, all 3 of them, endorsed me is because I get things done. Everything I do, I actually get it done. I work hard. I work tirelessly. I'm not an elected official, and I have what it takes to actually follow through in a really thorough fashion. I have many of endorsements from elected officials that I've worked with, all of which support me completely and totally. but Gabe's amount of endorsements just show how long he has been a politician, and I haven't. That's simply all that is.
I'm going to allow a 30-second rebuttal from each of you, starting with you, Gabe.
Yeah. So saying I've been a politician for a long time is an interesting statement. Um, I will say that I find it telling that my opponent spent most of her time talking about how she'd be a fresh face, poking holes in, or what she thought were holes in my statement about how I would be a fresh face. Yes, there are a lot of frustrations with the city of Corvallis that comes with being an elected official, and that comes with experience, sitting down and having people tell you to your face why you're doing something wrong. People who have real serious issues and passion with what's going on, and then doing your best to help them. And I have 4 years, I'm not a typical politician. I have a degree in industrial engineering, and I left that life to be in public service because that's something I'm very passionate about. And yeah, I guess I'll end it there.
I allowed Mr. Shepherd 1 full minute. Liz, I'm going to allow you the same.
So I have a lot of lived experiences that are outside of politics. I've suffered trauma. I know what it's like to have trauma. I have mental illness and addiction that has run through my family, and I have a special understanding for the homeless community because my family was homeless at one point. I think that is what I bring is real life lived experience and empathy and understanding for how the system works and how people are treated. Um, and the commissioners know that, Mayor Johnson knows that. And I have also owned businesses and been the boss of many employees. We currently have 600 employees at Benton County, and that is going to be a real job to manage. And I am currently the only candidate that's ever managed any human beings in the capacity of work. And so I think that's what I bring to the table.
Okay, I'm going to move over to environment, but we're going to do it very quickly. It was one area that we received actually a little more question than we often do as well. Really, it comes in three areas. What can the county do in terms of its operations to reduce its environmental impact? How can the county help local businesses and residents to reduce their impact? And can the county have an impact beyond its borders? I'm going to go ahead and start with Gabe on this. 1 full minute, really 1.5 minutes, somewhere in there would be good.
Yeah. So I think the county has the opportunity to be a leader in the state on the environment and combating climate change. Right now, the county's climate action plan is 2 pages, and it is seriously internally focused. If we want to talk about politician plans, like this is very much a local government plan. It is just about the operations of the county. I want to see this become a community plan. I want to reevaluate what the climate action plan is right now for the county, and bring people into that process and hear from people where out in the county we can help them out. The county's has the opportunity to be a great partner in lots of different things, including helping people make sure that their wells don't run dry outside of Monroe, and that we have these escape routes for fire. I think that there's opportunities to help local businesses. Yes, the county has a lot of opportunities to be a really good partner on the environment. I have the support of the Oregon League of Conservation Voters, one of the most premier, like, environmentally focused groups in the state. They know that I care about the environment, and that is a passion of mine. And one of the reasons I ran for office in the first place when I was back in 2020 when I ran for Corvallis City Council. The Corvallis Council has done a lot of good work, and I think I can transfer some of that work to the county government.
And then Liz.
I agree with Gabe on this issue. I think that the county's just done really the bare minimum when it comes to any kind of climate action plan, and they've only looked within. I think they can still do more, even yet, within the county and how they're managing from letting people telecommute a little bit more. We also have many of our employees, like residents, commuting into the county. Housing will help with that. We'll have less commuters from long distances, and that has a positive environmental impact. Um, there are so many things we can do to partner with our agencies, including our existing landfill to make the environment better. I think that this is going to be a community-wide project to just kind of say, what else can we do to recycle, improve our usage, and encourage our neighbors who are really the massive contributors to the landfill about their levels of consumption and use. This is a societal issue. We are a capitalistic society, and I really think that the only way we're going to significantly tackle the environmental issues is to adjust our way of thinking as a county, as a country, and that's how we have to move forward.
Thank you. I'm going to kind of lightning round one or two questions, then we're going to move to closing. We had a lot of questions about JSIP, but we also had a lot of questions about what about a new jail? Apparently, the current one is not adequate in the eyes of many residents. And what would be the plan going forward? It's been defeated, I think, 4 times. Currently, there's a plan to save some money and hope that voters can be approached to maybe pay for half of it. That's about as far as what I know. I'll start with you, Liz. The jail.
The jail is inadequate. The jail is one of the smallest jails in the state. It is not safe. It is wore out. It is tired and it's old. And we're sending many of our inmates to other parts of the state because we just don't have the capacity to care for the inmates we have. I think that we are going to have to come back to the voters at some point, but before we do that, we're going to have to earn some trust. I also know that we can do better with congressional spending packages and requests from the state for funding as well. As a county, we have not done a great job with federal funding. And under the current Speaker of the House on the federal level, they have really pushed forward a lot of justice spending. They have not on education and healthcare, but they have on justice, and I think we can go there for that.
Mr. Shepherd, the jail.
Yeah, I agree that our local jail is inadequate and that it needs to be expanded, and that at some point we will likely need to talk to the voters again about that funding. I will say that though I voted for it and I endorsed the measure, I also publicly expressed concerns about the last bond. And those concerns proved to be true with a 57% fail vote. And I really think the county lost a lot of trust in people. I was actually out there talking to people about the bond because that's my role as chair of the Benton County Democrats, is I'm out there and talking about the things that our party endorsed, including the bond. And I heard from so many people just how they felt like they were being lied to and misled. And I think that goes back to a fresh new voice in our county, someone who will actually go and listen to the people and engage with people about how we can fund our local justice center and fund our criminal justice system here in Benton County in a progressive and good way.
And then we'll move to closing. I want to say to our audience that we're not able to get specific questions answered. There's no way to cover it all in an hour. League of Women Voters will likely also do a debate. I know there's a debate online, I believe, available from Chamber of Commerce. So there's a lot of material out there, and you, of course, can go to the websites for each of these candidates and ask some questions directly. We started with Gabe Shepherd. First closing will go to Liz. 1 minute. Why should folks vote for you?
Gabe likes to say he's the fresh new face, but he's been around for a while. I would say that he's not. If you really want a fresh new face, it would be somebody who's not an elected official, hasn't been an elected official, and who's been knee deep in helping the county and helping individuals and helping other cities come through their problems when they weren't elected officials, not because they were obligated, but because I actually care. Um, and so I look forward to serving the county and being transparent and approachable as I've always been. And I'm super excited to continue to tackle these issues because it's going to take all of us to lock arms and come through some of these really difficult discussions like landfills and housing.
Mr. Shepherd, up to 60 seconds. Why should
Yeah.
folks vote for you?
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. I'm going to be a progressive voice on the county commission, something that I think the county's lacking right now. I'm going to focus on affordable housing, on climate action, and seriously on public engagement and making sure that the general public is heard. You can hear a lot about what I stand for, and yes, the long list of people who support me. And that's because of the work that I've done here in our county, here in our city in Corvallis, and across the state. You can go to my website, gabeshepherd.com, and see who supports me and how you can get involved. And I really hope I can earn your vote because there's a lot of things that happen around here that are really important to the general public. And I've made a lot of progress on things that our public cares about, including ranked choice voting, affordable housing, healthcare, all these type of things. As a city councilor, I've been an advocate for a while, and yeah, that means I'm experienced. So I really hope I can earn your vote and earn your support. Thank you.
Mr. Shepherd, Gabe Shepherd, Liz Irish, thank you for the hour. And to our viewers, thank you for your interest. Ballots will be arriving in mailboxes soon, and they need to be dropped or postmarked by May 21.